All right, welcome back. We are jumping right back into an experiment that's got a lot of people talking. We're trying to see if a special kind of engine oil can really truly rescue a motor that is just full of nasty sludge. This is round two, and believe me, the stakes are pretty high. So, just to recap where we left off, the first test was honestly pretty shocking. After only 2,700 miles, the oil filter was completely packed solid with sludge. I mean, so clogged that its internal bypass valve was probably wide open, just letting dirty oil flow right through. So now, thousands of miles later, we're asking the million-dollar question: did it actually work? Is this engine finally clean, or are we going to find another disaster? Okay, so here's the setup for this next leg of the journey. The engine has run for another 5,300 miles, mostly good highway miles, on the exact same oil, Valvoline Restore and Protect. The real test, the moment of truth, is what we find when we pull that drain plug. And that brings our grand total to 7,900 miles since this whole cleaning experiment kicked off. That's a pretty serious amount of time for this oil to be circulating, doing its thing, and hopefully breaking down all that baked-on gunk. We're 2 full oil changes deep now. Now, the tools are pretty much the same, but with one really critical upgrade. After how spectacularly that first filter failed, switching to a high-capacity Napa Gold filter was an absolutely brilliant move. It's just got more filter media, more surface area to trap all that junk, which is exactly what you need when an engine is this dirty. So that first filter told a horror story, right? This time, before we even touch the filter, our investigation starts with the first piece of evidence that's going to come out of this engine: the oil itself. All right, let's get into our first clue. We're under the truck, the drain plug is out, and we are going to analyze every single drop of this stuff as it comes pouring into the pan. And right off the bat, the first sign is actually pretty promising. Yeah, the oil is dark, but you want it to be dark. That's proof that the detergents in the oil are working, that they're suspending all that soot and grime instead of letting it stick to the engine parts. The key thing here is that it isn't that super coal black color you see in a motor that's just been totally neglected. It looks, well, a lot healthier. You don't always need a fancy lab analysis. Sometimes the classic mechanics trick, the finger test, tells you a lot. And the verdict here is that even after 5,300 miles, the oil still feels right. It has that good viscosity, it's not super thin or gritty. It feels like, well, oil. So let's just sum up what the oil drain told us. The viscosity feels good, the color is good, it's cleaning, but here's the big one. The owner reports that the engine's oil pressure has vastly improved during this run. That is a huge sign that the oil passages are getting cleaner and clearer. But just when everything's looking great. A closer look at the bottom of that drain pan tells us the story isn't quite over yet. There's something else in there. And there they are. See, they're not nearly as bad as before, but there are still these little sludgy clots at the bottom of the pan. And what that means is that the engine is still shedding some of that old, nasty, baked-on stuff. The cleaning process is definitely still happening. So the oil gives us a pretty positive report, but it's an incomplete picture. Now it's time for the real moment of truth. The big question is, what kind of secrets has that oil filter been collecting for the last 5,300 miles? This is it. This is the climax of the whole investigation. We're about to perform an autopsy on the oil filter, slice this thing open, and get the absolute, definitive proof of whether this engine is finally coming clean. And there's a real process to this. You use a special tool that just scores the metal can without crushing it. You turn it little by little, and then you hear that really satisfying pop as the metal finally gives way. Then you pop the base plate off, and you can finally, carefully pull out the filter element for the big reveal. All right, the can is open. Let's get our first look inside this thing. Okay, so the filter media is definitely dark. It's definitely dirty. And honestly, that's great. That's exactly what you want to see. It proves the filter was doing its job, trapping all those tiny contaminants that the oil was busy scrubbing off the inside of the engine. But that's not the real story here. The most important discovery is what we don't see inside this filter. And there it is. That's the money shot. Unlike last time, there are no big, pasty, disgusting clots of sludge packed in there. The pleats are clear, oil can still easily flow right through them. The filter is absolutely not clogged. This is a massive, massive win. So, we've got our evidence from the oil pan, we've got the evidence from the filter autopsy. It is time to put all the pieces of this puzzle together and deliver the final verdict. When you put it side by side like this, the difference is it's night and day. I mean, think about it. To go from a totally clogged filter in less than 3,000 miles to a perfectly flowing, functional filter after more than 5,000 miles, that's just incredible. This is all the proof we needed to see. So the conclusion from the source is crystal clear. This intensive cleaning process worked. The engine is now considered clean enough to get off the special treatment and go back to a normal maintenance schedule with just regular, high-quality oil. Success! But hang on, here is a really critical warning for everybody. Get this. After all that driving, the truck's own oil life monitor was saying the oil still had 50% of its life left. It was suggesting it could go over 10,000 miles. This is just a perfect example of why you cannot blindly trust those systems, especially on an older engine with a sketchy history. And that really brings us to the most important lesson from this whole saga, a simple little phrase that every single car owner should probably have tattooed somewhere. Oil's cheap, engines are expensive. An extra oil change is always going to be a better investment than a new engine. So look, the engine is without a doubt cleaner. This whole experiment was a huge success. But those little clots we still found at the bottom of the oil pan, they do leave us with one last lingering question. Can an engine that was once this badly sludged up ever be truly 100% clean? And what does that mean for its health in the long run? Now that's some food for thought.